wow. Good morning. Okay, first of all, I wish this session would have been open to a lot of our students. Not that I'm complaining that you're a little bit older than our students, all right? Partly because I found that this program, the way we've designed it, we actually wanted some deep learning, and I'm seeing it already in all the slides. The other part is we need to bring a movement together. All of you here are really evangelists. I know that you're all here because you feel for the earth and you wanted to drive change. And I'm delighted that you're all here. I'm even more delighted that we actually are here at the Lifelong Learning Institute. LLI was opened by Ong Yi Kang. I was part of the opening. And we wanted this to be a focus point where people could come here and continue to learn to upgrade. And I really love it that we're actually bringing the ecosystem together, because seated here with me on the panel are actually our future. They are the next generation leaders of many of the companies. And if you looked at the company, you would say, oh, these are traditional businesses. Why would young people, all right, want to be part of this? So I'm going to break the rules a little bit. I'm going to try and link why are we doing this? Yeah, the purpose is critical, because no point having a conference like this, no point having a hybrid format, launching a wonderful study if it's only kept amongst academia or industrialists. I need us all in this room to start a movement to build a better world, a more inclusive world, and SG Forward is not just about SG. It's about the community, it's about society, it's about our neighboring countries. So I'm going to start by doing a very quick intro. And I know each of you got fantastic background, and our MC did a great job shortening it up. But I'm going to start at the beginning. So each of you come from a family business. And I know, Michelle, you actually worked outside after graduation. Can you take us through that journey?
Oh,
your first job, where you came from, how did Papa attract you to join Meiwa?
Oh, okay. So I'm a chemical engineer by training. So I graduated in UK, and in those days I had to apply for a job, and it was very exciting because Exxon, and I'm really not very young, Exxon in the days when it was still Exxon, wanted to build a chemical complex in Singapore. And so I joined them, and it was very exciting. It was very exciting because we had an empty canvas, and with an empty canvas, what you're able to do is to be able to paint something on that canvas. I was a young engineer. I was sent to the US for training. But when we came back, we could build a company culture. It was very exciting to be part of something bigger than ourselves. I think Exxon in those days became the biggest investor in Singapore. And so it was very exciting because it's like you're part of a movement to build something more exciting. Now, when you join a family business, it's also exciting because I always say the life is about the paradigm you choose to see the world. You can see it as full of restrictions, or you can look at that empty canvas and see the areas which you wish and want to paint in, and you choose where you want to play. So just now when John was speaking, and he spoke about what he was trying to do regarding the consumer side of the business, I feel like that a lot of the times. So it's the same thing. We are able to look at our creativity. We have an empty canvas. There are some, boundaries, but what we hope to do is to be able to apply our creative talent to look at it, and whatever we paint becomes a creative expression of who we are.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Michelle. Michelle, you're the oldest daughter in the family. How many siblings are there?
2 sisters and a brother.
And so I know that, I know your papa, but actually the business is actually from your grandfather. So was it manufacturing even in those early days?
So, so we're really going into this. I hope John and Cynthia have a time
They
to say
will
as
have.
well. But so Mei Hua started is a third generation family business. In those days in Singapore, for my grandfather, there were too many mouths to feed. Singapore was a developing country, and we really have to understand Singapore was third world. And so what he did was when the children came home in the evenings, after school, they would have to go to the backyard and chop soap. So you buy one big fat pile of soap and you chop it up into smaller bits. And then you take barrels of oil and you loose pack it into plastic bags, and then you sell it in the Pasar Malam. And so, and there was no such thing as, the financial system wasn't what it is. So, in those days you do tongkang, very high interest rates. That's what they did in order to survive. We corporatized maybe only in the 1980s. So that was how he fed the family. In the 1980s, we corporatized. In those days, my uncle joined the business, and it was very obvious from early on that we weren't going to be able to break even looking at Malaysia. And so he's very adventurous by nature. He went to Africa and the Middle East, and that's how we established our brand there.
Thank you. Can we clap to that? And that is the story of Singapore. We all came from backgrounds, all right, and we built resilience, and we changed and transformed. I'm going to jump to you, John. You graduated from a very famous SMU. Yeah. Did you ever work outside? And what did your dad say to you about getting back into the family business?
Thank you for having me on the panel. Great to see so many of familiar faces. So I started I graduated, and like most of my friends, I joined the banking world before having to jump back quickly to the family business after just working outside for 1 year. I was happily working in a local bank, and was really involved in trying to help the internal businesses. And I kind of wanted to go into consulting, but didn't get selected. But I kind of found that passion again in the family business as I was uncovering and learning. So when I first I guess maybe it wasn't an immediate thing that when I graduated, my father said, join me. It started when I was maybe 6-7 years old. That was when I had my school holidays, and I can remember vividly, I had to follow my father on Saturdays to meet his customers. In those days, we were still kind of dropping off your bills and then collecting from the customers. And he would go around Victoria Market, meet his customers there. And that was the time where he started to inculcate that value that you need to come back to the business. Especially when I didn't do well in school. I wouldn't go to my mother because my mother would prepare the cane. So I went to my father. My father said, don't worry, I signed for you. Don't worry, if you don't do well, you can just come back to the factory to knock rock sugar. And that kind of spurred me to study better than go to SMU, right?
You were not so very keen to knock rock sugar.
Yeah, and so in that sense, and then every school holiday I would follow my father, go to the office, do my homework there, or I would basically help him. I would already start, from a young age, helping him to count the receivables. In those days it's cash, and then sometimes I'll like, hey, Pa, can I have some money, pocket money? I'll just take some. But along the way as well, there wasn't a real talk that son, I want to come to the business one day. But it was really watching him, observing how passionate he was in the business. He would work till late nights, be the last one to lock the factory gate, send his workers back home, especially because our factory used to be in Upper Serangoon, Hougang area. That's where the Teochew families are. And because of urbanization, we had to move the factory. And then, we would send the workers back to Hougang, where most of them stay. And then he would actually pick them. If they come back late, he would actually send them back home. So that was a kind of culture as well. But observing it, looking at it, I knew I had to go to the business one day. I was more fortunate.
And are you the youngest son?
I am the youngest.
And how big is the family?
I have actually 3 sisters, and then and three of us brothers. Yeah.
So a total family of 7, you're the youngest?
6.
6, all right, very good. So I'm going to ask you a question before I go to Cynthia. So when you pitch to the family, they are all in traditional manufacturing. When you pitch to the family to launch Innovate 360, did they say yes straight away?
No, I think it took time. In fact, even I guess I was in the family for quite long, about 13 years, but within the first 7 years, really had to prove myself. After that, through small projects, small wins, you kind of gain trust. And that's when I started Jewels, the rock sugar sticks. Then in 2018, step by step, it was multiple conversations, and it wasn't straight away that I want to go and be a VC fund. I want to invest in startups. I want to have an accelerator. I want to work with partners in Malaysia, in Singapore, in Indonesia. It was really from small things like we built a new factory, and my brother was saying, let's maximize. Then we rent it out. So I took that opportunity to say, rather than just rent it out to strangers, why not help startups? And so that journey was an incremental one. It was a slow, but it was kind of organic, where everything started to form. Yeah. So
John says you have to earn trust. It took him 13 years of working in the family. 7 years later, after he has got the trust, then he could start pitching the project. Yeah? So again, just because he's the youngest son doesn't mean it's automatic that he gets everything that he asks from his family. Right. We move to you, Cynthia. Same question, all right? A little bit of background. How long have you been at DSG, and how did you pitch the idea of EcoS?
Okay, so I think similar to the previous panelists as well, I've been working in DSG for a total of 10 years. And I remembered like 10 years ago, would I have imagined to join the family business? So it's really interesting because for my father, when we were very young onwards, we were already brought to the factories, even before we could crawl as babies. We were brought to the factories, and I remember really just like growing up, looking at the not just the employees, but also the waste collectors who are around our factories. And we really get to grow with some of the colleagues and employees who become part of our bigger family, the DSG family as well. And when I was around like 11 or 12 years old, there was one day that we went on a trip, on a family trip. My father brought this huge paper that he took from the factory, and he wanted us to sit down and write down our 10-year plan. Can you imagine an 11-year-old was supposed to already think about what she's going to do in the next 10 years, right? But of course, initially, my dad was the first one who wrote down what his 10-year business plan was. I remember that it was like 4 different sections. I have a total of 4 siblings, but then I have a big age gap between me and my younger sister is 7 years. And then me and my youngest brother is 9 years. And then I have an older brother 2 years above me. So when I was 11 and 12 years old, I didn't have younger siblings yet. So the section of the paper was for mom, for dad, mom, my older brother, and then me. So there's only 4. And when he gave us the pen to write down this whole 10-year plan, we saw what his plans were, and naturally somehow like our plans for like what we wanted to study, the things that we would be doing afterwards, had this sort of natural alignment. Exactly. So that's
What
a very
a clever trick. Can you please all go home and ask your children to write down the 10-year plans?
And so that's really, I felt that was what started for me to start thinking about potentially in the future, joining the family business, right? But when I came back, it was immediately, actually, right after I was done with my studies in Sydney. I had to join the family business because my father initiated this project in order to professionalize the first generation's business first, not DSG. So I joined him as part of the internal audit team, and then I worked as an internal auditor to finance accounting, focusing on cost accounting, and then eventually to the group side of financial reporting and investments. Now, the steer towards sustainability did not happen until 3 years ago. Even though, to be fair, the ESG's business itself is already quite sustainable, right? How the whole circularity with waste paper was already set up. So, but it's really about, so it's not about reinventing the wheel, but more of like, how can you make the wheel turn faster? And how can you maximize the potential growth opportunities from all of these different things that you could do? So, I remembered that, with any kind of business proposal, it's really about putting down the pros and cons, the upside potential, the downside risks, right? And that's what we also learn in our finance accounting, like how do you make the whole financial projection analysis, etc. And that's how I approached it with the sustainability initiative itself. So in 2019, I started to study further about circular economy and sustainability. I did my postgrad in UK specifically on that. And then afterwards, I was working on this whole pitch. I had to think about how can I create a sustainable initiative within DSG that will generate not just social environmental impact, but also money. Because at the end of the day, there needs to be a profitability path, right? And that's when I saw that the waste recycling division, it was back then just a small division. I thought like this actually had really great potential to be turned into its own separate subsidiary. And from there, I pitched it to the board, I pitched it to the family, I pitched it to you, Prof, as my mentor and family advisor. I was asked to pitch around by my father, basically, to multiple different people. Eventually, when I got the approval, I finally got quite I would say, minimum amount of a budget, but I worked with it. And then, everything about DSG Sustainability Initiative started from there. Right now we're working together, not just with the informal waste sector, because that's the conventional side, right? But we're also working together with waste management startups across Indonesia. And I'll get to that more later. But so that's the first thing. I would say, approach it as a business proposal. And number 2, similar to what John was saying, I think it's very important to build that track record of trust and credibility. If I didn't have that in my first 7 years working in the finance accounting side, I don't think that I would have been able to, the proposal might not have even been accepted. And with EcoWest, it was at that point, it was 2022, and then this year, 2023, it's a lot easier for me to pitch EcoWest Climate Tech Hub already because of the things that I've done in DSG.
Very nice. So a lot of people think ESG is good to have. It's actually wonderful to have because it makes commercial sense. And I want to go back to that word, all right? Because everything is not about just for the planet, for the people, but it's also for profitability. So I'm going to come to you, Michelle, because you make a fantastic statement at the end. But you're a listed entity. And so you have to clear all the right channels. So how do you invest in ESG, and how do you balance between long-term targets and short-term, answerable to all your shareholders? Okay. How do we do that balance? Innovation is great, sustainability is great, but how do we stay profitable and afloat?
Yeah, so I think everybody thinks that ESG costs a lot of money. I think there are two parts of ESG, right? There are the soft things, which is capability development, and then there are the hard things, which involve capital. When I first started, well, first of all, I wouldn't say that. So I care about sustainability. Before this word ESG was in fashion, so that's just me. It's a pet passion of mine. When I started trying to make the company a little bit more sustainable focused, it sounds very formal. I didn't ask anyone. I didn't tell anyone. I just kind of did it. So which is why I said I don't have that formal thing. So what I explained earlier, when we started, what I concentrated on was soft skills. And there is a lot of capability building and capacity building regarding ESG. And so what do I mean by that? So I had earlier stated that, so this is Scope 3 emissions. Right now it's all regularized, it's called Scope 3, but in those days nobody knew what was Scope 3. Essentially what we did was I found like a junior guy. Nobody knew what was sustainability. I found a junior guy and I said, okay, we have to be more sustainable and we have to have a more sustainable supply chain. So we are going to use Google and we are going to create a framework. And we did it. And then after that, we said we have to talk to our suppliers and we have to talk to our customers to have a more sustainable supply chain. And we are going to use Google to decide, to come up with what is a more sustainable supply chain. And that was how we did it, right? So, I mean, now there are matrices, there are all sorts of fancy words, but essentially it really is common sense. So as I mentioned before, we just go out, we talk to our suppliers, we listen to them. Everybody wants to be a good corporate citizen. Nobody aims to wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to be evil, okay? So what we do is we sit down, we hear their struggles, we try to bridge the gap between what the world says and sees, and we try to explain what they say and see. And it's just about bridging that gap. Because if we are able to bring them along in the journey, we all win, right? When we fail to bring them along in the journey, we all lose. Because when they have standards and benchmarks, but that they are too high, and they feel that they cannot see, they cannot dream of achieving it, then why even start? And so we hope to talk to them, sit down and talk to them, and just show them the way. Because when we do that, we are all creating a sustainable journey as part of that journey with us. So that was what we did with our suppliers and customers. That's what we did first. Then after that, the energy transition, again, is just, it is the hardware. And again, as what Cynthia said, is showing the ROI and coming up with it. I would say that even showing the ROI is not great because, we're all, capital is the most, is one of those resources that we are limited by. But how do we start? We start with measuring. And again, measuring is free. It doesn't cost money. So what we tried to do was we got all our engineers together and we just So I told you our good friend is called Google. In those days, we didn't have ChatGPT. But we tried to come up and align and agree how does one calculate greenhouse gas emissions. Today is different. We're operating a new world where everybody has one, almost the way people calculate are pretty much aligned. In those days, we had to come up with ourselves. We used our good friend called Google, and everybody had to start submitting this every month. So instead of calculating based on electricity consumption or steam consumption, we calculated it on greenhouse gas emissions, and we tried to reduce water consumption as well. Now, measurement is very important, because when you start measuring, you now know how to shoot the arrow. So that we started that, aligned that. Everybody had to repeat that once a month. So that was how we began in the early days. And so now with SGX, we have to come up with, we have to tighten the noose, what I say. You have to make sure that you have external verification, all sorts of other things. But you must understand this is to, essentially that comes when you have to prove to the world as opposed to proving to yourself. I'll say it that way. It's important, okay? And so that's the refinement which we're doing, which we have done in our journey. But I would start like the early days. Everything is capacity building and capability development.
Very nice. ESG, I think a lot of us concentrate on the E part, and if you are a listed entity on the governance part. But social, and social is the capacity and building, that part is critical. I'm watching the clock. I know there's Mike. I'm going to just quickly jump to you, John. So John, you've done Innovate 360. You have an Asian Sustainability Fund. I'm looking at your left and your right, and you've signed a lot of partnerships. All right, he loves to sign partnerships with ladies, yeah? Okay. So can I then jump in and ask, what do you look for when you are looking at partners? Because in the audience today, there might be many people who want to partner with you as well. What are you looking for in terms of partnerships? And, where do you want to go from here?
So I think for me, I think partnership is very important because we can leverage on their strengths. That for example, we're working with both these two ladies is because they have insight to their own markets, and with that, they also have resources that a lot of our startups can tap on, and that's where for us, I'm looking at partners who are like-minded, who really want to find ways that they can help startups as well, but at the same time, be able to help themselves. By value adding. So that's the kind of partners that we're looking for. Doesn't matter what industry you're in, because even within our own mentors, it's really a diverse pool of people. Of course, for the Asia Sustainability Fund, where Prof is also an advisor there, we are looking for partners as well who are keen to invest in impact, but also look at sustainable returns as well. Yeah, so these are areas that we're looking at. I'm also looking for partners who have facilities, for example, who can use that facilities to help startups as well. Yeah.
So actually, for Singapore as a small country, the more you do partners outside the country, the better it is for our startups, because in many ways they need to think global. Otherwise, it's not scalable. So I'm going to come to you, Cynthia. So since EcoS started, I know it's very early. What are some of the exciting things that you are seeing that's happening that you think Indonesia would benefit tremendously from? Again, a group of possible partners who will love to be part of EcoS and then coming in to help, because we are a small country, but Indonesia is huge.
I think that the whole climate tech scene has been picking up a lot, especially this year in the venture investing space. It's been on the spotlight. But I would just like to say, right, Prof, that I feel that when it comes to innovation, sometimes you don't need like mind-blowing innovation, really. there's two factors that I think are more important. Number one, practicality. Especially from a social perspective, like can the employees operate the machineries, the tools, and etc. And number two, scalability. Because if it's not scalable, if it's only successful in the labs, then on the ground, on the operations, it becomes inaccessible, right? So it's pointless. So with those two things in mind, I would say that the innovations that I've seen, I mean, I've in this year alone, I think I've gone to Europe and parts of Asia, and I see that Southeast Asia in particular, when it comes to climate technologies, we are relatively new, but it's important for us to build our local climate innovators because only they are the ones who really know what the challenges are. For instance, a very simple example, in the waste space in Indonesia, I talked about how we work together with waste management startups. So these waste management startups, what they do is they develop an app. It's an app that individuals, consumers can just log in, create an account, start segregating their waste, and then they order a waste picker to come and pick up their segregated waste. And they actually switch it with tokens or points. Who doesn't love like redeemable points from like online e-commerce platforms or Gojek points, etc., right? It incentivizes the individuals to start segregating their waste, which is a very tough job in any part of the world. And then on the other hand, the waste pickers, these modern waste pickers, they get the order from the app, and then they get to pick up the waste, and then they sell it to the waste management startups for them to, again, sell it to off-takers and recyclers like us, for instance. We focus on the paper waste, right? So it's solutions like this that are actually like platform aggregators. It's not necessarily, again, like mind-blowing technological innovations that can also provide, be very useful.
See, when you have a big country, you get scale. And so with an ecosystem that all come together, simple, but you incentivize. So that closed loop is so critical, having that incentive. So I hear measurement, I hear partnership, and I hear practical solutions. That's what we are looking for. There are two mics there. I'm going to allow 5 minutes Q&A. All right, anybody wants to come up? You only have this chance to engage. Thank you very much. A question, yeah? That comes with a question mark. Is the mic on? Can we have it on? Thank you, Kenneth. Our professors are versatile. Can operate mic also.
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Ong Jin Kiat from NCAS Singapore. We are also in major waste recycling of a different sort, pre-consumer. I think what you said about, John, I can identify that. The problem with our universities and polytechnics is that they only do seed very small, 1 kilo, half kilo, 2 kilos. So we actually have 8,000 square meter facility, and we are licensed 450 tons per day. All right, so that's one. One of the things I came across is that we actually just received a license on SFA to be an animal feed manufacturer. But John, your startups, whatever, are all on, peas or something that's green or cells. All right? They are not from side streams or waste streams, food waste streams. I encountered a lot of regulation or lack of regulations from the authorities because you can't sell anything if you are not licensed. So that's a big problem. I only learned that somebody has got a permit, just for recycling of spent grains into cookies or something like that. So this is the regulation. So, are you helping, to, I suppose, brainwash, the authorities?
Okay, so the question, unfortunately or fortunately, we don't have a regulator on the panel. Okay,
Oh,
but the
actually
question.
we do. So Prof is also sitting on SFA.
Only on the board. Okay, so quick question. Can your Innovate 360 engage,
Yeah.
all right, with, like companies like his
Oh,
all
yes.
right, to talk with your
So-
regulator.
Because we don't have, we are not like the EU. We have no
Yeah.
regulations. There's no standard.
So I just want to quickly just to address your question. So we don't just do sell alternative proteins. We do look at waste stream valorization. So some of our startups, they take spent barley grain from the Milo factories to produce all types of protein foods, and then also looking at feed. So happy to engage with you later. But at the same time, I just wanted to just let you know as well, Michelle has a
Yeah,
pet
I think
business as well.
animal nutrition, from what I understand, is a highly regulated space. So even if you were to want to sell your product, say for example, in China or in Japan, it can possibly take you years to get the license in order to sell. So by nature of what we are feeding the animals, it is a highly regulated industry, and therefore it will take several years of investments, animal trials, food trials in order to get it certified. That's the nature of the industry globally.
But that being said as well, I think going forward, governments also realize that food security is a big issue. So a lot of the governments are looking at this area. I mean, they are going to start with, I heard in the next couple of months or a year, they might start cell-based meats in pet food in China, just as an example. But you know, I think I also sit on the Ministry of Trade Industries pro-enterprise panel. So if you have solutions, novel solutions that require regulatory help, you can also look for me as well.
Very good. So afterwards, tea break, all right? Go to John. Any other question? Oh, 1 minute. Okay, no more time. All right, Ken. Quick. All right, round robin. Okay, we start with Michelle again. So for anyone who's looking at the sustainability journey, can you give us what's the key advice? I know you talked about measurement earlier, right? But what's the key advice at the personal level, at the corporate level?
It's going to happen, so please don't fight it. Just think about how you're going to operate within this environment better happily rather than unhappily.
Well said. John?
I guess being open-minded, really thinking about how you can take, I mean, it doesn't need to be alternative proteins and like super high tech. Any example would be, for example, just my intern came to me and said, why don't you just set aside your recyclables, have a special designation in the factory. So it starts with something small.
Correct. Simple and small.
Invest in people, invest in yourself. I think that it's very important because when you want to have a proper sustainability strategy that's being integrated into your business, you really have to know what you're doing.
Very nice. Ladies and gentlemen, don't you think this is a great start to a wonderful day ahead? So can we put our hands together? A big thank you to Michelle, to John, and to Cynthia.